Lindsay, you certainly know that President Nixon lacks no vindictiveness in his political approach. It happened to Charles Goodell here. Do you think that you're running for president, and during that period that you're attempting to get the Democratic nomination, that he will take retribution on New York City in any way?
Well, I should hope not. It's very hard to do that. I don't know how one would do that. There's very little flexibility in what any chief executive can do in any particular special area by way of grant or denial. The federal programs that are needed in New York City are the same as needed in every city, but the Congress enacts them, and they're uniform in their policy, and they have built-in formulas. And there's no flexibility to change those formulas, whether it's Medicaid distribution and reimbursements or the issuance of housing support, you name it.
Do you think that in your candidacy that your major issue that you've talked about obviously is the cities? And clearly 3/4 of the people in this country live in and around cities. What has been the effect of the dialogue that's taken place between the Nixon administration and the nation as far as the cities are concerned?
Well, of course, the Nixon administration tends to write off the cities. The only urban programs that are going forward are those that were already there. There are no new initiatives that are happening, with the possible exception of welfare reform, if it happens, and how it happens, and what it looks like. And the other exception would be revenue sharing if we achieve it, and how it's achieved. But I think the key problem is that there is no real attack on the cancer of society today, which is the despair of poverty and the alienation of race and deterioration of central city areas. I'm not sure there's any real understanding about what cities are all about down in Washington.
Let's go back to the issue of family assistance programs. As you know, the Nixon administration recommends about $1,600 and a little bit more with food stamps for a family of 4. What would be your bottom level for a family of 4? What dollar amount?
Well, because we know that the $6,000 figure is fair and proper in these high-cost industrial states of the North. We all understand that. We also know that politically that's unrealistic. You're never going to get to that figure, so that it's more appropriate to talk in the area of between $4,000 and $4,500.
Do you think this will adequately eliminate welfare as a problem? Will this mean that the administrative problem of giving out funds from the various states to supplement the Nixon program would be eliminated?
Well, of course, the whole thing ought to be administered out of Washington. It shouldn't be to the states. The proper incomes policy and program that takes the present welfare structure and just junks it. Really, I mean, just to throw it out. It doesn't work. It's very bad, and it keeps people trapped in the cycle of poverty, and it's bitterly resented by the middle class. So you have to have something, and what the something is an incomes policy. It's a base that you put under people who cannot protect themselves. It ought to have built-in incentives in it. Various kinds, so that people always have the urge to, if they have the ability to do it physically, and if they can do it, to improve themselves and go up the ladder. But it ought to be nationalized, it ought to be made uniform as much as possible, and it ought to be administered out of Washington.
In your quest for the Democratic nomination for the presidency, you've been criticized for spending too little time here in the city that we sit in, your city of New York. How do you respond to your critics on this issue?
Well, I say that I've been in the mayor's chair for 6 years, and I've spent a lot of time in that chair, but I also know that you can't be in City Hall all the time. You got to get out the streets, the neighborhoods. And then you have to take your case to your state capital. So I go to the state capital of New York, which is Albany, to lobby for attention from a rather distant state government and a rather insensitive state government. And then we get other mayors in the state to do the same thing. As a result of that, we forced revenue sharing in New York State, the first state to even have revenue sharing, and that was just by the exercise of political action and political power. Then we go to Congress and lobby for the things that are needed, health care, housing, a proper approach to law enforcement. So it's not a great extension to go from there to neighborhoods taking the case, the political case, And I'll admit it's rather lonely, and I'm kind of alone on it because I don't have 16 other big city mayors with me as I do when I go to Washington to argue the urban case. But what I'm trying to do is to tell as many people in the country as I can the nature of the problem that exists in domestic America and what it's going to take to try to repair it.
It would appear to be pretty clear that Governor Rockefeller is leaning to the right from what he has done as far as welfare programs are concerned in this city, where he asks that parents get a few points if their children join the Boy Scouts if they're on welfare, the tragedy of Attica and his handling of this. Where do you think he's going? What is he about right now politically?
I don't know. I can't answer that. One thing I've discovered now in many, many years in elected political office is that it's impossible to judge motivation. You just have to judge by results and conclusions and actions taken. And I don't know what the governor has in mind in respect of his own political course in the future.
Do you think that your argument with Governor Rockefeller, some private, some public, have assisted New York City? Have they assisted in getting more funds and programs for New York City? Or has it been a detriment for New York City?
I don't think anything has happened from the state legislature and the government in Albany in general that's helped this city and the other cities of the state except by political action. Every gain we've made, and we've made quite a few. We've had some frustrations in Albany, some bitter ones and some losses there. But we've made quite a few gains, but every single one of them was done by being very strong politically. Nothing has happened out of graciousness or largesse or lèse-majesté. It's been a battle the whole time, so that I don't think that some of the differences that the governor and I have from time to time about what communities are all about and what the city's all about are anything but part of the process of trying to fight for the needs of the city.
As you run for the Democratic nomination, is your goal to win? I would guess the obvious answer to that would be yes, but is there a secondary goal or a collateral goal? Are you trying to raise certain issues, and if so, what are they?
No, it's to win. It's too brutalizing an experience to go into it except to win. I'm not interested in academic exercise. There are other ways to do that. And I knew in advance how much backbiting there'd be and nastiness and sometimes grubbiness from local politicians around New York, local press and all that.
What about this truth squad that's supposed to be following you around? I guess some of the Queens homeowners who don't want to see public housing.
That's not a problem. I think that in many ways spells out the case. Let's talk about housing and what it means. Let's talk about scatter-site low-income housing, which we've achieved in New York.
And been courageous in sticking to your guns.
We've moved it forward, and in fact, we have many. Last year, 1971, we broke all the records in the history of New York on starts for low and middle-income housing. 22,000 new units were started. About half of that was low-income housing, and most all of it is scatter-site. There's only one site that blew up on us and where we had a problem, and that, curiously enough, that's Forest Hills. Curiously enough, that happened after it had been agreed to by the normal political processes, including the representatives from that area who had votes to cast and whatnot in the governing bodies in the city approving it. It was only later when the shovel started to go in the ground and some militants got a hold of it that it began to escalate again. And then they threw gasoline on the flames in Washington, as you'll recall, when the junior senator from New York got involved, Mr. Buckley, and then the White House got involved, and that threw some more gasoline on it. So I think that's an issue that's worth discussing around the country, and I've had truth squads before. Every time I've run here for mayor, well, there's always been a dissenting group who don't agree with what I stand for.
Mayor Lindsay, when you announced for the presidency, if I can sort of capsulize that statement, you said that Nixon was going off to China when he should be visiting the Wattses, the Appalachians, the Harlems of this country. I don't think you said in lieu of China, but the point was that this president was not looking at the problems that face us domestically. Can you expand on that? What would be your 2 or 3 major criticisms of the approach of this administration?
Well, the key problem you have is that the inner city is all but written off. And the strategy, the Washington strategy is to address themselves to suburbia. Suburban America is the political gain that they see, and they don't see any political advantage in trying to address themselves to the problem of the central city at all. And I think that's a disaster for the country. This country, if it doesn't repair itself in its metropolitan areas, is going to be in very serious trouble. And I think that's one reason that our foreign policy is not believed, is that people around the world know that the United States has internal problems and they're not really being cured. And that affects your foreign policy.
As you've indicated earlier in our discussion, you are in the quest for the Democratic nomination for presidency to win. Now, in order to achieve that goal, it is certainly necessary that you achieve certain political coalitions. In the past, you have been variously associated in coalition form with blacks, with Jews. There have been some articles indicating that you're attempting to develop a coalition with the blue-collar worker in Florida. That's specifically been mentioned. What actually are you trying to do? What are the coalitions you feel you must develop in order to achieve a victory and become the Democratic presidential nominee?
What you have to live with in many parts of the country is called the politics of scarcity. And you find out who are the victims of the politics of scarcity. Well, it's chiefly minorities. It has been for a period of time. They're the bottom of the ladder. Now, recently, you look at it and you find that the blue-collar worker is the victim of the politics of scarcity. He's having a terrible time. Inflation is killing him. He can't take a vacation. He can't afford it. Now he's got unemployment staring him in the face, and if he doesn't have unemployment immediately, he's afraid of it next week. Now, as he gets frightened about his economic security, he's going to start blaming people. And the first person he blames is the person who's in more trouble than himself. So hence you get polarization between blue-collar workers and minorities, blacks and Chicanos, Puerto Ricans. Have you ever seen hungry people in a starving land who are fighting for food? You understand what happens to people when they're afraid and when they feel shortages. Secondly, you've got a lot of young people who are a new force in the country, and they just don't accept anything that's been passed down. And of course, the Republican show in Washington looks very exclusive and very old to them. Nothing new about it. Senior citizens are increasingly troubled. I think that there's a growing sense that something's wrong generally in the United States, and that whereas the impact was only on a few people before, it's on a lot of people. Therefore, in my own campaign, I'm not failing to talk to anyone. I'm discussing this thing with everybody who I can get to. In Florida, I spent some time last weekend there in the very northern part, which is thought to be Wallace country, or Jackson, if not Wallace, because it seems to me important to talk to all who listen.
And was there a responsiveness there to what you had to say, or?
Yes, there was some, more than we had thought there would be. The crowds were very big, and they listened very carefully.
It is clear that the issue of busing is going to be a major political issue in this campaign. How will you deal with the busing issue? Specifically, do you support the recent decision that said that students should be bused from Richmond to various adjoining cities? Do you, first of all, support Judge Merritt's decision in Richmond that indicated this was a way to do it?
Federal courts have to be sustained. Federal courts have been the only place where they've been able to have a court of equity resolve some of these fearsome disputes. And that judge's decision, I think, has to be respected. I don't know the details of it at all, but it's no different from a lot of other decisions that say that it's perfectly proper and necessary constitutionally to use busing as a tool to bring about integration.
Well, how do you explain, or what do you say about your fellow Democrats? Humphrey not as clear as he should be. Jackson certainly not as clear as he ought to be, Muskie not as clear as he ought to be. What and how do you differentiate yourself from them, and what do you think they ought to be doing as far as this is concerned? What should they be saying?
I think that really the point is that busing is a perfectly proper tool for integration, but it must be thought of as something that is a way station towards high-quality education. The target is great education, and the larger issue, over and above, and much more important than busing in many ways, is the public primary and secondary school system turning out educated children? And if not, why not? And the fact it has to be acknowledged and agreed to, I think, that particularly in urban school systems, that it's not turning out really educated child, and that something's wrong with it. And we must address ourselves to that question. And until we address ourselves to that question and repair some of the bad systems that exist now, the terrible emotion over busing is going to persist, and it will desist, it will subside, once people have confidence that primary and secondary education systems are uniformly good.
Now, not as dramatic an issue, but probably of greater importance to the black community or any oppressed community in this society is the economic one. In your city recently, the contracts of 2 drug companies that did business with the city were cut off because of their employment practices, subject to possible correction. Now, the President of the United States, from Kennedy to Johnson to Nixon, all have had that power, and none have exercised it. If you become President of the United States, would you exercise the power that is certainly the President's to cut a contract of any major company, be it GM or anyone else, that discriminated against blacks or women or other minorities?
See, what distinguishes me, I suppose, a little way from other candidates who are running in the field is that I have a record as the chief executive of a big government. This is the second biggest government in New York in the country. Only the federal government's larger. And we've done just that here in New York. In fact, we did the unprecedented thing not long ago when we were advancing our New York plan for recruitment of minorities in the construction trades and building trades. We had three unions out of the whole crowd held out and said no, simply wouldn't go along. Well, I just stopped construction on $200 million worth of public construction.
Did that work?
7 months. We held out for 7 months. Everybody was screaming, but it worked. Everybody yelled.
It's great to be giving up the daily work stint for carefree years, to travel, to hunt and fish, or whatever retirement means to you. But be sure of your tax situation, including your retirement income credit, your extra exemption, and your wife's if you're both over 65. IRS has publications and schedules, and it can help you.
Hello? IRS? Thanks for the books. I've got just one question.
A call will do it.
Chapstick's right on the kisser. Chapstick's right on the kisser.
There's really nothing better for lips than chapstick lip balm, regular or flavored. So if you see someone with dry, chapped lips, do them a favor. Let them have it. Right on the kisser.
How do you, on your own behalf, get an assessment of what is black thinking in the society? Who do you talk to? What vehicles do you use? How do you find out for yourself?
Many people as possible, as widely as possible. Black elected leadership, that's key. And then we have my cabinet has the cabinet consists of about 15 people, and I think 4 of them are black. There's a black fire commissioner. He's the first black to be the head of any major city fire department. That's even tougher than being in top of the police department in many ways, if you know fire departments. Model cities, it's J.B. Williams, who you probably know, who's a very shrewd, capable political tactician and sensible. You've got great antenna. Eleanor Norton, do you know Eleanor Norton? Also very keenly honed political mind. Great sense on that kind of thing.
Your walking tours have become famous. Is that just showbiz, or are you really seeking to find out, and do you find out things from people on those tours? Talk to people, find out what they're about?
You talk to people that way. Now, the best way to do them is to do them without notice, so that you don't attract any special interest groups, just people. Don't, no signals to where you're going to go, and don't take any press but maybe one person. That's all. And that's the way I do them mainly. I take a single reporter, or the most two.
Yeah, you've been doing that for some time here in New York.
And then just take off, and we plot a whole route, and we don't tell anybody about it, so that I just see people as they are, sitting on the doorstep or rapping in the street, and also to make sure that that nobody fools me on city services. I don't want a sanitation truck in there before I get there.
Right,
Well,
right. What are the 2 or 3 major things they talk about, if one can generalize, say, over the past 6 months here in New York?
I think the main thing is jobs among young people. That really is critical. You got a lot of teenagers and men in their early 20s who are just can't get work, and as a result, you got a lot of hustling. We have a serious veteran problem. There are between 2,000 and 3,000 veterans being discharged in New York every month, and the economy is not in good shape. New York City is a very strong job market city. Not all of those veterans come from New York, but they choose to stay here. The key reason they choose to stay here is that your chances of getting a job are better here than in most city areas. These kids come to cities, they're not going to the countryside. But it's been very difficult, and there's no federal program for jobs, no follow-through, no counseling even. They just come out of the Army, and there they are. And there's no drug program that the federal government has at all. A total of 35 beds in all of the veterans hospitals in this area here for narcotic patients. We are currently treating 3,500 veterans who are addicted.
Is that right?
In our own city institutions here.
Well, isn't it also true that you're spending more money here in New York than the entire federal program?
Yes, we are. Yes, we're spending close to $100 million now on narcotics treatment programs, one kind or another, and we're spending another $85 to $90 million just on law enforcement on narcotics out of our own budget, which is terrible. You have to be in that position. We've got a lot of narcotics programs going. We have, I suppose, that all told, we probably have about 25,000 persons who are addicted in some kind of treatment, either methadone maintenance or a drug-free program of one kind or another. It's expensive, it takes a lot of work.
Back to politics. John Lindsay, are you going to run in the District of Columbia primary in May?
I have no plan to do that, no. And I don't see that developing in any form.
At the present time, what primaries have you committed yourself to other than Florida?
Florida, Wisconsin, and Massachusetts. That's it.
Thank you very much, John Lindsay.
And now for the news.
This is Stanley. He's going to sleep through the news again tonight, when what he should do is shop around and find a program with strong newsmen, a news commentator that wakes up your fighting spirit, radar weather that you can understand, and sports with a genuine sports nut. Wake up at 6 and 11 o'clock. Watch Total News 7, weeknights on Channel 7.
Like that, when I tell you to, okay? Hello?
Sylvia Wooten decided early to devote herself to her fellow man through medicine. She works in this free clinic in Washington, D.C. It is run by a hospital which, like her, has not forgotten where the need is greatest.
School, I know you don't like that, but you're okay.
At Children's Hospital, people like Dr. Wooten have been caring every day for over 100 years. Won't you care for just a moment?
Elizabeth Montgomery stars in Bewitched next on Television 7.